Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be talking a little bit about anxiety and depression. Now anxiety and depression is commonly talked about. I feel like, we kind of go throughout our schools or throughout our workplace or throughout our college campuses and we always hear things about anxiety and depression, or we hear things about, this person has anxiety, this person has depression, or even just our culture nowadays. We see it in TV shows, we see it in movies. We even see it in YouTube videos. Anxiety and depression is just something that's kind of talked about a lot, but I feel like it's not talked about so much in a sense of how to get help with anxiety and depression, just more of kind of stigmatizing it in a way, which I think is not something that is good when it comes to mental health. So today we're just going to jump into that topic. So I just want to give you a little bit of background behind anxiety and depression and just mental health in general. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 43.3% of 13 to 18-year-olds are struggling with a mental illness, and about 21% of these are really severe issues. So it really is a problem among teenagers, among early college students, and these people are really needing to get help and really needing to find some insight into what they're feeling, into their behaviors. So in this video, I got the opportunity to sit down and discuss mental health with Dr. Margo Delagarza from Sigma Mental Health Urgent Care. So today I'm here at Sigma Mental Health Urgent Care with Dr. Delagarza. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do here and your experience in the field?
Well, I'm a mental health clinician and I've been in the field for almost 18 years. And I work actually a lot with teenagers and young adults. And so I have a lot of experience working with actually all ages.
Wow, that's really nice. I think it's really amazing how long you've been in it and just helping, I think, children like when they need it the most sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really great. So just focusing on the topic of, depression and anxiety, I feel like that's kind of commonly heard or commonly discussed. So do you think that is kind of as big of a problem as people make it seem within our society?
It actually is one of the biggest problems facing our society right now, is that people are suffering from anxiety and depression. Those are the most common. And oftentimes don't know where to go to get help, and so they kind of suffer in silence.
I think that's really, I guess, eye-opening the way that you explain that, because I know there's kind of a stigma around mental health, and so I guess, like you said, like with people suffering in silence, I guess, why do you think that's such a huge issue? Like, kind of what has made it become such a big deal like it is today?
There is so much pressure nowadays to be successful, to look good, to fit in, and oftentimes we are in our heads a lot about, like, I'm not good enough, or I don't fit in, or I'm not like them, I'm not as successful, I'm not as good as them, and so oftentimes we don't want to admit that to other people, and so we just kind of suffer, One of the things that I see a lot as far as depression is that sometimes we experience difficulties in our childhoods, within our families, at school, and we don't really know how to handle it, and we just kind of push our feelings down, but we might feel really sad about things or angry about things and just never really process those emotions. So we end up feeling really depressed about things that happened in the past.
That makes a lot of sense. I've definitely kind of been there. I get what you're saying. And what are some of the symptoms of anxiety and depression? Like just the general things to be aware of?
Well, for depression, you'll notice that people have a hard time getting motivated. They may not enjoy the things that they used to enjoy. Like they just don't find fulfillment in those things anymore. It might be like difficult to get out of bed, or sometimes not be able to sleep at all. Changes in appetite, so some people might eat more and some people might lose their appetite. And actually for anxiety, the same thing. People might have difficulty sleeping, they're very worried, they might start avoiding for example, social situations. If you notice a lot of avoidance, that's probably anxiety. So it's worry about I'm going to be rejected, so I'm not going to go to that party, or I'm not going to try out for the swim team because I probably won't make it. What if I make a mistake? And so it really starts affecting quality of life.
What are some of the things that can contribute to issues with anxiety and depression?
Well, the tricky thing about anxiety is that every single time you give into it. So, for example, if you don't go to the party, the next time you're invited to a party, you'll be even more anxious about it. So, anytime we give into the fear gets bigger. And so, for anxiety, what you want to do is actually confront it, face the fear, and then just kind of sometimes rationalize it away. Like you kind of think, what's the worst that could happen? This really isn't a big deal. It's okay if I fail. I'm not always going to succeed at every venture. That's okay. The other thing with anxiety as well is like the worry about people liking us or fitting in. The reality is not everyone's going to like us, and that's okay. You like yourself. That's the most important thing. And with depression, the same thing. The more that you start, avoiding friends, isolating, staying in bed, not being active, that kind of stuff, you'll tend to feel more depressed because you don't feel good about yourself and you feel lonely and you start to think like, well, they don't want to be around me anyway. And so that kind of perpetuates the cycle of depression.
So just some general coping mechanisms for anxiety and depression, what can people do to deal with that better?
The number one thing we need is connection. You need to have at least one person that you feel you can really turn to, that you can say, hey, I'm really freaking out about this exam, or I really like this person, but I don't think that they'll ever go out with me, or, someone to kind of help you process all that stuff that's going on in your head. And also someone to talk to if you're going through difficult times. So if stuff's going on in your family or something happened to you. So having someone to talk to, a deep connection with at least one other person. Sometimes you may find that all of your connections seem superficial, and so starting that with the processing with a therapist could be very beneficial. And then you start creating those deep, meaningful relationships, right? The other thing that I highly, highly recommend is mindfulness. And that really is like focusing on the present moment. And so if you are depressed, you might be ruminating a lot about the past, but the past is already gone. So as much as you can, bring yourself back to the present moment. Same thing for anxiety. It's all future focused. Anxiety is all about what's going to happen, or I'm afraid about something in the future. So you just bring yourself back to the present moment and you say, I can handle this moment, and the anxiety will kind of go down. Also, breathing exercises really, really work for anxiety. And I know that people say, that's so cliche, come on, I'm breathing all the time. It doesn't work for me. But it's really cool because it's like that fight or flight response, right, that has the short, shallow breaths. So if you just regulate your breath, slow it down, your brain will understand, like, wait a minute, there's no danger here, there's no threat, I can just calm down. And so you can do that with your breathing.
I guess that's something that anybody could do anywhere, so
yes,
it's really powerful.
Just take a breath.
No, I know. So my heart rate is always super elevated just because I guess I'm worried and the pain level. So every time I go to physical therapy, she takes my pulse and she's like, "Hey, lay here, deep breathe. We're not doing anything until it's lower." So I completely understand that. I am all about deep breathing.
Yes.
So I feel like a lot of times sometimes we know someone that's dealing with one of these issues and it can be pretty severe. So what should we do as peers or friends or family members to these people to help them?
The number one thing is to let them know that you're there for them. So create a non-judgmental environment where they will feel comfortable opening up. So for a lot of people, it's very, very hard to trust because they've had experiences in the past where they tried to open up and then they were kind of shot down, or it kind of backfired. And so be a friend to that person. Be willing to listen to them and then help them get help. Help them find solutions. So if they need to talk to a therapist, help them know that there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means life is happening, and sometimes we need help in coping with that.
So I know personally, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I'm so depressed or I'm so anxious, but there's a difference between, I guess, having those feelings and then dealing with this as a severe problem. So when can you kind of find, when it's turning into a bigger problem and you should seek help for it?
That's a great question, because we all will experience anxiety. Most of us will experience at least a bout of depression. And when it starts to become a problem is when it disrupts your quality of life. That you are isolating, you are not able to hold down a job, your grades are plummeting. When you start noticing, like, it isn't just like I feel sad, but it's like I cannot get out of bed, I cannot concentrate, I cannot be around people, then it's time to get help.
Mm-hmm. And I know, kind of going back to the earlier question, but so parents who have kids that are dealing with these kind of things, what are some things that they can adjust in their own household or do to help their kids get better?
I think creating the environment of understanding, of love, is extremely important. So no matter who you are, you're going to want to please the parent. And so if the parent is critical and judgmental and is like, why are you always in bed, or come on, your grades aren't good enough, that just makes it worse. So creating a supportive environment is extremely important. And also parents need to model healthy behaviors themselves. So sometimes parents are so stressed out, so anxious, so frantic that the kids can't help but emulate that. Like, that's just what they learn. And so talking openly about feelings, and then just kind of prioritizing what is really important in our family. It's not the end of the world if you don't make a good grade. It's not the end of the world if you don't make the team. Just give it all you got, do your best, and to know that at different times, your best will look differently. Mm-hmm. So there are going to be times when we're struggling and we're doing our best, though. And then there are other times when we're not struggling and then our best looks really good. But as long as we're doing our best, I think that's what really matters.
I agree. I think that's really great. So I know a lot of times there can be sometimes emergency situation, regarding mental health. When it comes to depression, that could be something like suicide or something like that. So if someone finds themselves in a situation like this, or is knowing somebody that's in a situation, what can they do to prevent this?
Well, if someone is actively suicidal, immediately take them to an urgent care place, an emergency room, to a hospital. Help them, regain safety. That's what we have to do. We have to establish safety. And so not leave the person alone. And ultimately, what we want to do is catch it beforehand. And so as much as you can, if you start seeing changes, the grades are dropping, the person's not calling, they're isolating, you just notice that something's just kind of wrong, reach out to them and tell them, I'm here anytime. And then if it does become, an emergency situation, don't leave it to chance. Definitely make sure that they get help immediately.
So do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share for somebody who's struggling, or just for the, mental health in general?
I think one of the important points is to know that this too shall pass. So for every, situation, you can get through it. It's a temporary situation. And, life is difficult. That's the reality of life, is that we are going to have difficult situations throughout our lives. And so the more that we are, can trust ourselves, that we can get through it, we can see like, wow, I've been through difficulties before and I did get through it. So then you see how resilient you really are. And to always have that social support, a supportive circle. So even if it's a very small circle, one other person, at least somebody where you feel like, you're not alone in this world.
Okay. So do you have any resources that you could offer for students who are needing to get help, or for parents or for peers?
So, I highly recommend the mindfulness. So anywhere that you can learn, mindfulness techniques, but of course therapy. Therapy isn't for people that are, crazy. It's for learning really, good life skills, how to regulate your emotions, where most of us, haven't learned that. So I'd say make sure that you're taking care of yourself. You're eating well, you're sleeping well, you're, exercising, you're taking care of your spiritual needs as well. There are what are called like the pillars of well-being. And so if you have deep, meaningful relationships, you take care of your body, you take care of yourself spiritually, overall you'll be well.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time and for letting me interview you. It was very helpful, and a lot of people will be getting help from this, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for checking out this week's conversation with KAILEY. Stay tuned for next week's video.